We're Sid and Mackie, and we're professional mountain bike racers on a quest to race the best and most challenging mountain bike races around the world. This year, after a long season of racing everything from cross-country to enduro, 12-hour races to stage races, we found ourselves in mid-October wishing we had a few more races on the calendar. While this might sound normal, in 8 years of racing, this has never happened before. Today, we're going to share the things that have helped us avoid burnout this year and also take a little trip down memory lane.
Well, yesterday's luck seems to have run out.
That didn't go super well.
Today's kind of a big deal.
It's Halloween.
Yep, that's a big deal. Oh, we should show off the robot.
Oh, okay.
I'll be right back.
Mackie's trash robot.
It's not a trash robot. It's a cardboard box robot.
Okay, but see what I mean about all the other cardboard pieces, like kind of sullying the
Yeah, but isn't
experience?
he cool?
This is a delivery, so
Oh.
I hope Victor, our UPS driver, appreciated the robot. Today is an exciting day, however, because it is day one of our 2023 off-season training.
Whoa.
I know, and this day has never occurred in October before. The past 9 years that we've been doing this, we've kind of like come into October like a train wreck. Like basically like full speed. And this year we kind of got to October and we were like, we want to do more races. We took a couple weeks off. We decided to just get the jump on training. What we kind of learned this year is like, the season doesn't have to be like an inexorable decline. You can actually recover while training.
Wow.
Wow.
And racing.
And racing. I think we're both like really stoked with how we felt at the end of the year. And it's been actually really hard to take time off in October because the weather has been beautiful.
The reason we're starting the gym work before we start the structured bike training is hopefully we'll get over some of that initial gym work soreness and fatigue in these first 2 weeks, so that when we start the on-bike training, we can have both of them happening at the same time without being quite so destroyed as we would be if we started both intervals and gym work at the same time. Before we start this first gym workout of the season, we want to give a big shout out to Harry's, the sponsor of this video. You may not know it, but I have been shaving my legs since I was just a wee bike racer at the tender age of I think 15 or 16, so yes, over half of my life. And for a large portion of that, I've been using Harry's razors because all of the other option were women's specific razors that were ridiculously expensive. I was poor, I was racing bicycles, I was like, I can't afford to buy razor blades, they're way too expensive. So I had a lot of razor burn. Then I found out that Harry's was a thing, and the blades were only $2 each, and they would ship them directly to your house. So obviously, I jumped on that train ASAP and have been using them ever since. If you check out the link in our description, you can get a starter kit for only $5. That starter kit includes a super nice razor with a weighted handle, 5-blade razor head, the foaming shave cream, and a protective case for your razor for when you're traveling. If you're looking for the best shave of your life, whether it's your face or your legs, click the link in the description to get your starter kit for only $5. Okay, let's do this gym workout. Nice job.
Feels kind of heavy.
So what are these? What is your first superset?
Deadlifts and plank rows.
How many?
6.
6 reps.
5 sets.
5 sets. Don't pass out.
So I cut open my shin pretty badly. With my pedal, I just spun out on a climb and like pulled my foot out of the pedal, but didn't get it out of the way. I did that, which is fine, but it's not playing nicely with the deadlifts. I tried putting these old socks. That didn't work. On the bright side, at least I'm doing my deadlifts great. Superset number 2, it involves bench press, which I feel like is gonna be, I'm gonna guess, a smidge discouraging after a long time of not doing upper body stuff. I would say that is the difficulty of balancing gym work with bike stuff, is we end up backing down the gym stuff a lot the like second half of the season, just because we're racing so much and fatigue is already really high. And if you're not on top of your fueling, you can lose a lot of muscle. I think we did reasonably well on that this year. Clearly we've gotten weak. Weak! Are you feeling weak?
Not too bad. I felt okay on those deadlifts.
I feel like it's been ages since I did bench press. I did dumbbell bench press, but that's not at all the same thing.
I mean, how heavy were you doing them?
Probably 25 or 30.
And what are you going to do your bench press at?
I was going to do 75, but I think that's a bad idea. Okay, so I lied. We're actually doing ground press. It says bench press up here, but then when you read the instructions, you're doing it on the ground. Because you're supposed to do the, like, eccentric really slowly and then explode back up. It's kind of like trying not to crash on a mountain bike.
You guys should hear the number of excuses that Sid has made already before she did her first one. She informed me that her arms already felt like jelly, that the floor was dirty, and that she had washed her hair yesterday, so she didn't want to be lying on the floor. That was all before she started.
That wasn't an excuse, that was just a complaint.
Oh, it wasn't an excuse, it was a complaint? Every year since we started racing full-time in 2014, we've finished the season burned out and not wanting to even look at our bicycles for at least a couple months. At the time, we couldn't figure out why we were so exhausted, but in retrospect, it's pretty obvious. For example, here's what 2017 looked like. We started off the year in Athens, Ohio, where we'd spent the holidays with Sid's family. Then we flew to Scotland in mid-January to spend a month training in the rain and snow to improve our wet riding skills. We flew back to Ohio in mid-February and a few days later hopped in the van and drove to my parents' house in Taos, New Mexico. 2 weeks later, we continued driving west all the way to San Francisco, where we left our van and got on a plane to New Zealand. We spent the next 2 weeks preparing for the first round of the 2017 Enduro World Series in Rotorua. Starting to rain again. Connor Hamilton! Then, just 2 days after the race, we flew to Tasmania, where we spent the next 2 weeks checking out the crazy wildlife and preparing for the second round of the Enduro World Series in Blue Derby. From there, we flew back to San Francisco and drove down to Monterey for Sea Otter. Next up, it was Moab for a race, Taos for a few days to overhaul our bikes and van, then on to Oklahoma for another race. Then back to New Mexico for races at Glorieta and Angel Fire Bike Park. A few days later, I headed to Silver Mountain, Idaho, while Sid flew home for her grandfather's 95th birthday. Then I drove to Salt Lake City and flew to Vermont, where I met Sid and her parents to race the first round of the Enduro East Series at Killington. From there, we drove back to Ohio, then on to West Virginia for Mountain Bike National Championships, and then promptly flew back to Salt Lake City, hopped in the van, and drove to Snowmass, Colorado for the sixth round of the Enduro World Series. Then we had a whole 2 weeks in Taos before heading to Crested Butte for the Big Mountain Enduro, followed by a 900-mile drive to Truckee, California, where we wrapped up our season at the final round of the California Enduro Series. In case you lost count, that was 3 continents, 4 countries, 9 states, and 13 races, with well over 20,000 miles of driving.
If this all sounds like we were living the dream, well, we were, but there's always another side to the story. When we returned from New Zealand, we found out our van had been towed from airport parking.
This is not good, because the van was definitely parked right there.
And we had to empty our savings account to pay the impound fees. In May, I contracted a mystery virus that left me fatigued and sick for most of the summer, pushing through it to race.
You feeling okay? Yeah.
In July, Mackie crashed in Vermont, sprained his thumb, and got such a bad laceration on his arm that it required a drain. In August, I had a high-speed crash that left me with a concussion, which in retrospect was probably my 4th in 2 years.
So, unfortunately, that didn't go super well.
Somewhere in there, Mackie also dislocated his pinky finger. By early September, we were done with bikes and needed close to a month off. Then we picked up and did it all over again. For this period of our lives, we had no real home. Our belongings were split between a storage unit and our parents' houses. The longest we spent in one place for an entire year was 4 weeks. And money, or rather, lack of it, was a constant stressor.
According to my phone, it is currently 91 degrees, which means it's 91 degrees in the van too.
Sid, what just happened? Why are you all wet, even though you're under the awning?
Trying to push the water over to collect it and it came out like that.
Ew, gross.
Weevils in our couscous, which we want to eat.
So in retrospect, it's not that surprising that we finished every year sick, injured, burned out, or all of the above. So what was so different about 2022?
I think for starters, we made recovery a huge priority starting even early in the season, as opposed to waiting to when we really felt like we quote unquote needed it. We definitely took time off after major races. We
Had a house. I think that was a big one.
we had somewhere to recover.
Yeah, being able to like come back. First of all, not being on the road continuously.
Yeah.
Like being on the road for 2, maybe 3 weeks at a time, and then coming home, being able to recover and edit videos in like a nice location. I think that made a big difference.
Made a big difference. I think we underestimated how draining all the like little day-to-day things of van life were. And you know, we would kind of think like, oh, we can do so many trips a year and that'll be fine. But the trouble was in between those trips, we didn't have anywhere to go.
Still traveling.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially.
Yeah. And just every little thing was kind of difficult. And obviously like this winter we spent a ton of time renovating our house, which was not necessarily ideal training, but I do think it was very worth it to get to this time of the season and know that we're going into a whole winter where we have some house projects, but they're very minor compared to last year.
And it paid off for the whole season. Focus on training and recovery and racing, and I think that made a big difference.
The other thing that we did a much better job of this year than we have previous years was keeping up our gym training throughout the season. We still did, I think, slack off a little bit towards the end or stop doing as many gym workouts, but in the past, we would kind of get to the race season and would pretty much stop doing resistance training at all, which I think kind of led to losing more weight and more muscle over the course of the season, as well as getting injured, et cetera, et cetera.
I think a big part of that was the same thing, not being on a road all the time. Like when you're on the road, you know, you can get a gym membership to some gym, but then if there's not one of those where you are, like you have to go find a community center, find a different gym, or like, and it's a constant hassle.
We made a conscious decision to take some time off from racing in June of this year when all the wildfires happened. And because we were able to do that, we were able to log a little bit more training and more volume, as opposed to, you know, kind of going into the season and then just like hanging on for the rest of the season. I feel like we actually made big gains throughout the season. I think part of that was making that decision. And another decision we made is that we did our last race on October 1st. And even though we were feeling good and there were races we could have added to the schedule, we decided that maybe just because you feel good doesn't mean the answer is always like do more until you don't feel good.
Yeah. The goal is not to not feel good. It's to stop when you're feeling good.
We recognized that we had some really incredible opportunities from like 2015 through 2019 to travel all over the world, race our bicycles at a really high level. It was a really incredible opportunity. It was an incredible privilege. I think we're both really glad that we've kind of stepped away from that, I would say, really intense privateer bike racing lifestyle.
Now we're like, what are the coolest races? What are the most fun races? And I feel really fortunate that we're in a position where we can do that.
And this is going to get sappy for a second, but that is largely because of all of you guys who have watched our videos. And we're really, really, really grateful for that. And especially to everyone who has supported us on Patreon, and also to the amazing crew of sponsors that we have now who see the value of the videos we create and okay with us racing what we want to race.